New York prosecutors who secured the first ever criminal conviction of a former president on Tuesday said the hush money case against Donald Trump should not be dismissed in light of his election victory. 78-year-old Trump had been scheduled to be sentenced on November 26th, but Justice Juan Merchan last week put all proceedings on hold at the request of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And prosecutors raised the possibility of a 4-year pause in proceedings, which could resume after Trump leaves the White House. In May, a jury found Trump guilty of falsifying business records to cover up a $130,000 payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. The money was meant to buy her silence before the 2016 election about a sexual encounter she says she had with Trump. Trump denies the affair and pleaded not guilty at trial. He claimed the prosecution was politically motivated.
But this is a pure case of voter intimidation and election interference.
Trump's lawyers urged Merchan to dismiss the case, arguing that having it loom over Trump while he was president would cause what they called unconstitutional impediments to his ability to govern. His lawyers also argued his conviction should be vacated and the charges dismissed because of a U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in July. The justices decided presidents cannot be prosecuted over their official acts, and that evidence of their official acts cannot be used in trials over personal behavior. Bragg's office said that its case dealt with purely personal conduct. Falsification of business records is punishable by up to 4 years in prison. Before he was elected, experts said it was unlikely, but not impossible, that Trump would face time behind bars. Trump's victory over Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris in the November 5th election made the prospect of imposing a jail sentence politically fraught and impractical.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said Tuesday he will nominate Wall Street CEO Howard Lutnick as head of the Commerce Department. That means the investment banker will lead Trump's trade and tariff strategy for the agency that has become the U.S. weapon of choice against China's tech sector. He is a longtime friend of Trump and supports his vision to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. and promote cryptocurrencies. Though Lutnick does not speak about China often, he is a big proponent of tariffs, especially aimed at Beijing. According to the New York Times, he said in a podcast interview last month, quote, "Don't tax our people, make money instead. Put tariffs on China and make $400 billion. Lutnick's appointment was a setback for 2 other Trump supporters who had vied for the commerce job, including former Small Business Administrator Linda McMahon. CNN reported on Tuesday that Trump is expected to name her as Education Secretary instead, heading a department that Trump proposed abolishing during his campaign. McMahon is the co-founder and former CEO of the WWE professional wrestling franchise. She was a major donor to Trump during his first presidential bid and headed up the Small Business Administration in the billionaire's first term. Trump also said Tuesday that he had chosen television personality and surgeon Dr. Mehmet Oz to serve as administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The wide-reaching agency has annual spending of $2.6 trillion and runs Medicare and Medicaid, which together provide health insurance for over 140 million Americans. Trump promised during his campaign not to cut Medicare, but he is expected to let federal subsidies for Medicaid expire at the end of 2025. The agency also handles much of the health insurance enrollment under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Trump and other Republicans have previously tried to repeal the law, but now say they only seek to overhaul it. The president-elect said Oz would work closely with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump's nomination to lead the Department of Health and Human Services.
Ukraine used a U.S. missile system to strike deep into Russian territory for the first time on Tuesday. That's according to Moscow, which said Kyiv deployed what the U.S. calls the Army Tactical Missile System, or ATACMS. Russia said its forces shot down 5 or 6 missiles fired at a military facility in the Bryansk region, causing no casualties or damage. Ukraine said it had struck a Russian arms depot around 110 kilometers or 70 miles inside Russia and caused secondary explosions. It did not specify what weapons it had used. ATACMS have a range of 40 to 190 miles. For most of the year, Washington has instructed Kyiv not to use American weapons to strike inside Russian territory. But President Joe Biden gave approval just this week for Ukraine to use the ATACMS missiles for such strikes. Military experts say U.S. missiles can help Ukraine defend a pocket of Russian territory it has captured over the summer, but they are not likely to change the course of the 33-month-old war. More consequential changes in the U.S. posture are expected when President-elect Donald Trump returns to power in 2 months, having pledged to end the war quickly, without saying how. In an address to Ukraine's parliament, President Volodymyr Zelensky said the war's decisive moments would come in the next year.
At a soup kitchen in Khan Yunis on Tuesday, these Palestinians held out empty pots, hoping for meals of cooked rice. There's a shortage of food and supplies in Gaza, and there's been a big increase in looting. Only days earlier, nearly 100 trucks carrying food for Palestinians were violently looted while entering the enclave. 2 UN agencies told Reuters it was one of the worst aid losses over the last 13 months of war. The situation is very difficult, said this man, who added that this was the only soup kitchen with food every day. The looted convoy had been transporting food provided by the UN agencies who spoke to Reuters, UNRWA, and the World Food Programme. It was instructed by Israel to depart at short notice via an unfamiliar route from Kerem Shalom border crossing, according to UNRWA's senior emergency officer Louise Wateridge. Of the 109 trucks in the convoy, 98 were raided. Wateridge also said some of the transporters were injured during the incident, but did not detail who carried out the ambush. Fighters from Hamas and other Gaza factions have formed an armed force to prevent gangs from pillaging aid convoys in the embattled territory. The force was formed this month as public anger rose at aid seizures and price gouging. That's all according to residents and sources close to the group, who say it has staged repeated operations, ambushing looters and killing some in armed clashes. On Tuesday, dozens of Palestinians held a funeral for a member of Hamas security forces, who died a day earlier in clashes with looters of food aid trucks. Gazan Daya al-Nasara said, "Everyone is against the bandits and looters, but people are being forced to buy from them."
You are, against your will, obligated to buy a flour bag from a thief for $53, which is lower than its normal price, which has now reached $120 to $133, because you can't pay $133 for a bag of flour.
Before the war, a sack of flour sold for $10 or $15. In the West Bank, the head of the haulers union, Adel Amr, said he's concerned about his drivers making the trip to Gaza.
Of course, we get worried for the driver in Gaza that comes to transfer the aid, which is not merchandise. So he leaves his home risking his life, not knowing if he will come home, from gangs and the thieves and the armed gangs in Gaza.
Amr said he was also concerned the supplies they bring in will never make it to the people who need it.
Expectant mother Vasha Jain says she stays indoors in New Delhi to avoid breathing the toxic smog covering northern India. Her husband is equally concerned, worrying about their child growing up in such polluted air. On Tuesday, she and many others in northern India woke up to another day of severe pollution.
I don't step outside the house, I walk around inside my house, eat healthy, and we also have air purifiers at home so that we breathe fresh air. So these are the precautions I take. There is concern for the baby. If this is how the situation continues, how will things be in future? However, my doctor has given me good guidance of staying at home. Also, there is no other way but to face this situation.
Each winter, India faces air pollution as coal air traps dust, fumes, and smoke from illegal farm fires in Punjab and Haryana states. On Tuesday, New Delhi's 24-hour air quality index was 488 on a scale to 500, according to India's Central Pollution Control Board. It says 0 to 50 counts as good, and anything above 401 as severe. Swiss experts ranked the Indian capital as the world's most polluted city, with air quality classified as hazardous. The government has been forced to restrict vehicle movements and construction activity and has urged schools to hold classes online. This week, the country's weather department said that a shift in the fog towards the northern state of Uttar Pradesh had helped improve visibility in Delhi. Local media reported that strict measures to reduce pollution have slowed production at over 3.4 million small and medium-sized businesses in Punjab, Haryana, and Delhi.
Brazilian police say President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva could have been killed before his inauguration in 2023.
Viva o Brasil e viva o povo brasileiro!
They uncovered a military plot to kill the then president-elect days before he took office and stage a coup. 5 people were arrested on suspicion of being linked to the plan. The army confirmed current and retired military officers were arrested, including one who was a member of former President Jair Bolsonaro's cabinet. Documents seized by police show how the plan was to shoot or poison Lula and his vice president-elect, put retired army generals and other officials in charge, and then hold new elections. They were also planning to kill a Supreme Court justice who had investigated Bolsonaro, police say. Lula defeated Bolsonaro in the 2022 election. The former president has never recognized his defeat and is currently being investigated for his alleged role in encouraging riots in Brasilia on January 8, 2023. One source told Reuters a police investigation that's about to wrap up will find Bolsonaro conspired to engineer the attempted coup after losing the election. He's not commented publicly on the allegations.